How's everybody doing? Welcome back to Kiddushin Daf Dalid, the 8-minute daf, where we try to give the full synopsis of the daf in under 8 minutes. Thank you for being here. We're in the middle of a sugya of a yatsa chinam ein kasef. You see, a woman has 3 stages in her life. Ketana, that's from the day she's born until 12. Nara is from 12 with simanim until 12 and a half. 12 and a half onward, she's called a begeres. So when the Torah tells us v'yatsa chinam, that a ama ivriya, a girl who is sold as a Jewish slave, she goes out chinam for free, ein kasef, without money, which is redundant. The Gemara learns from that v'yatsa chinam, when she turns a nara, she becomes 12 with simanim, she leaves her master. Ein kesef comes to teach us that she leaves the master when she's a begeres 12 and a half. But it's impossible to be a begeres when you're 12 and a half if you're already left when you're 12. Gemara teaches us an idea, sometimes the Torah says 2 concepts, and the only way we know the original concept, nara, is because it says begeres. It doesn't say either of them, but it says v'yatsa chinam ein kesef, and therefore we know both concepts. Now, a very similar thing we have, and this might explain it a little better, is by Toshav and Sacher. You see, when a Kayan has a Eved Knani, a non-Jewish slave, that slave could eat terumah. But if he has a Jewish slave, he cannot eat terumah. And the Torah tells us that a Toshav and a Sacher cannot eat terumah. They're types of Eved Ivri. What's what? What does a Toshav mean? What does a Sacher mean? One of them is a typical Eved Ivri, which he could only work for 6 years. The other one is an Eved Nirtza. That's an Eved that decided he wants to stay with his master, even though the Torah recommends not to, and he becomes a Nirtza. You take a ice pick or something, and you make a hole through his upper ear on the door, and like this, he could work until the Yovel. Now, and we call him a Toshav because he's there, he's a resident, he stays there for a very long time. Now, if he can't eat terumah, certainly an Eved who's only there for 6 years can't eat terumah. So why does the Torah have to tell us both? We don't know what a Toshav means, we don't know what a Sacher means, but now that we have both of the words, we know we covered all our bases. The same thing with a Naira and a Begeres. We don't know which one is what, but if we have 2 limudim, now we covered our bases. We're talking about a Naira and a Begeres. Now, what kind of begeres leaves? The Gemara tells us we're talking about an islandess. That's a woman who has simani islandess. She has a very deep voice. She has a different type of body that cannot have children, and therefore the chiddush is that an islandess can be sold as an amma, even though she never comes to naros, and she goes out when she becomes a begeres. When does an islandess become a begeres? When she's 20 years old, says Rashi. It's actually machlokes. Some say 18. Rashi brings 20. Very interesting that the Torah sometimes says the word me'ein without a yud. Me'ein bilam, me'ein yevami. And that comes to teach us that when the Torah says the word me'ein, or ein, which is not, with a yud, you could take that yud and learn something from it. So by us, ein kesef, we're going to learn from the yud that the father gets to keep the money of Kiddushin. We find something similar by the pasuk of terumah. It says v'zera ein la. The halacha is that a daughter of a kohen could eat terumah, but once she marries a Yisrael, she no longer eats terumah. If her husband divorces her or dies, and she doesn't have children, v'zera ein la, she goes back to her father and she could eat terumah. What if she has grandchildren? Is that considered as if she has children and therefore she cannot eat terumah? What if she has a child or a grandchild, according to Taisvis, that's a mamzer? Is that considered a child, which would prevent her from eating terumah? So the fact is that a grandchild, we don't really need a pasuk. We learn bnei banim hareim kebanim, that grandchildren are like children, and therefore she cannot eat terumah. It's as if she has a child. But the extra yud teaches us that even if her grandchild is a mamzer, she can no longer eat terumah. Abaye argues. Abaye says there's a concept called milsa da'aseh b'kavachomer torach v'kasav l'kra, something that you can learn out logically from a Kal V'chomer. Nevertheless, the Torah will go ahead and write about it. This idea that Milsa Asya B'Kal V'chomer Tarch V'Kasal Akra is only when we don't have a better answer to say. But if you do have something better to say, we don't say Milsa Asya B'Kal V'chomer Tarch V'Kasal Akra. In other words, we'll say that the pasuk is coming to say the better idea. Now the Gemara tells us that we have to say that the Ma'aseh Yadayim, all the earnings of this girl go to the father, and also the Kesef Kiddushin go to the father. Why do I need both? The Gemara tells us because Ma'aseh Yadayim is something that she worked hard for, and therefore I would think that she deserves it. On the other hand, but she gets room and board from her father, so therefore he has das and he wants to take that money in lieu of the room and board. So I would think that's why he gets the Ma'aseh Yadayim, but he shouldn't deserve the Kiddushin. That's why I need a pasuk for both. You can't learn from a Kal V'chomer from Amar Vriyah. If Amar Vriyah is bought with money, so too a woman. Why? Because she has something special. She actually leaves her master with money. If you pay up the remaining years, she goes free. The Torah says Uba'Allah, and from there we learn the kinyan of Bia, relations, causes Erusin, the first step of marriage. Now, you need a pasuk. You cannot learn it from a Kal V'chomer from a Yavama. The reason is because a Yavama has something called Zika. Zika is a bond that automatically happens when the Yavama's husband dies. She becomes Zakuk, she's bonded to the Yavam until either he's miyabim her or performs chalitza, and therefore she's nikna bebia, and you can't learn from her to a regular wife. Rabbi Isai, have a wonderful day.